You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
You're listening to Mission Log the Orville, an episode-by-episode discussion of the adventures of the crew of the USS Orville.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mission Log the Orville. This week, Mike and I explore Identity Parts 1 and 2. The one where Isaac gets a reboot and Ed gives his old flight instructor 13 button salute. Can't wait to find out what that is. We'll take it apart and identify the meanings, morals, and messages and see if the episode aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi.
And I'm Mike Richards. Mission Log the Orville is a conversation that depends on your participation. Share your thoughts, ideas. Tell us what we missed at ML_the Orville on Twitter, Mission Log Pod on Facebook. You can email us at missionlog-theorville@roddenberry.com. And if you're watching this on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode. Now here's Jessica with Identity Part 1.
So much happens in these two episodes, I forgot that this is how it started. Isaac and Claire decide to tell Ty and Marcus that they are seeing each other. And big surprise, the kids already knew it, and they were just waiting for them to tell them. Claire is surprised that this isn't overwhelming news, but apparently it was to Isaac, whose eyes begin to flash before going dark, and then he collapses. No amount of tinkering in the medical bay can answer what is going on with Isaac, and by the looks of things, he is no longer alive. With the weary permission of Admiral Halsey, who sees this as an opportunity to perhaps get the Kaylon to finally join the Union, Ed takes the crew to go to Isaac's home planet. Kaylon is so far that they'll be out of range for communication with the Union, and as the ship heads there in quantum drive, the Finn family stand beside Isaac's shell, coping in the best ways they know how. Claire tells him that she loves him and asks him not to go. The Orville enters Kaylon's system and hails the planet and apologizes for showing up unannounced, and as he does so, the ship powers down and all of its systems become non-responsive. The Kaylon are scanning them, and upon completion, power is restored and Lieutenant Kiali is sending landing coordinates. Gordon navigates the Orville through the atmosphere of Kaylon. Its clouds are punctured by shiny skyscrapers, and beneath the cloud cover lies an intricate silvery circuit board of sentient AI life. The ship touches down, and the Kaylon instruct Ed to exit the ship and bring Isaac. Ed, Kelly, and Claire escort Isaac's body and are met by the primary Kaylon. In moments, we learn that Isaac is not malfunctioning, but instead has been deactivated. His sole purpose was to observe the humans, and he had collected enough data that he will now be dismembered and reintegrated. Before the Kaylon can collect Isaac's body, Kelly and the team attempt to reason with the primary, explaining that they have obviously become attached to him, a defect seen in the eyes of the Kaylon. The primary asks them to wait a moment as they take Isaac from them, and the crew watches on. Isaac is reactivated behind closed doors. He has explained the situation. Isaac asks if a decision has been made, to which the response is not yet. He also seems surprised to learn that Ed and the Orville are currently on Kaylon. He is escorted to speak with Ed. Despite everyone being happy to see Isaac alive and well, especially Dr. Finn, we learn that Isaac is not planning on returning to the Orville. Finn is heartbroken on her own behalf and her children's, suggesting that he should return to the Orville to at least say goodbye and pretend that he cares. Isaac returns to the Orville to say goodbye to Marcus and Ty. They are glad to see him alive and well, but are confused to learn that he will be leaving. Claire says that if Kaylon joins the Union, they'll be able to stay in touch. And when Marcus asks what will happen if they don't join the Union, Isaac does not answer. Meanwhile, Kelly and Ed are in discussion with the primary about the very same topic. All of Isaac's reports and human history has informed the Kaylon that an alliance would not be beneficial for them. Ed and Kelly make a case as best they can, and the primary says he will take take it into consideration, but that a decision has yet to be made. Tala escorts Isaac to the mess hall in order to officially discharge him, and Isaac finds himself in the middle of a farewell party that he doesn't understand, with a cake he can't eat, and emotions he doesn't share. Even Malloy sings him a heartfelt goodbye, but it doesn't seem to leave an impression. Isaac eventually channels Sally Field for his goodbye speech and acknowledges that everyone on the ship likes him. Claire stops him before he leaves to say her heartfelt goodbye despite his inability to reciprocate. Ty gives Isaac a drawing of all of them together as a family, so Isaac doesn't forget them, but Isaac coldly says that he is unable to forget them because his data is stored in his memory core. Ty, upset, runs off. As Isaac walks off the ship, he drops Ty's drawing. While analyzing the planet Kaylon, Bortus and Tala find what appears to be numerous long-scale weapons cropping up at an alarming rate in the southern hemisphere of Kaylon. Ed and Kelly ask them to continue discreetly monitoring the situation. Claire finds Ty in the simulator hiding up a large tree. He has found the discarded drawing. Claire tries to explain that Isaac doesn't have feelings the same way that biological life forms do. Ty says that his mother just doesn't understand, that he does love them, that he wouldn't have played games or come to dinner with them if he didn't. Claire leaves him to sulk a little longer, seeing that she isn't going to make much headway. Instead of going to school, Ty slips off the Orville in search of Isaac to give him back the drawing. Two Kaylon are approaching, and Ty decides to hide and let them pass. He has found what seems to be a ladder descending into the planet. Unfortunately, the drawing falls, and Ty climbs down to retrieve it. Ed and Kelly are on a video chat with Primary, who tells them that they still haven't made a decision on whether to join. And when the call ends, Ed says that it's odd that an AI race can't make a simple binary choice to join or not join. Claire bursts in, exclaiming that Ty is gone. A bioscan of the planet reveals Ty's location is underground, and Tala, Claire, and Bortus head to retrieve him. He has been found, but besides the moment being joyful, Ty says that there's something bad down here. He has found a gigantic underground graveyard of biological bones. Additional scans reveal identical graveyards planet-wide, each of them holding at least 500,000 bodies. The crew visit Isaac again on the planet and reveals their findings, asking if Isaac knows anything about it. After enough prodding, Isaac reveals that the Kaylon were invented by a biological species and that an unresolvable conflict led to the necessary destruction of the people. He also reveals that Kaylon never intended to join the Union, but as Ed attempts to leave with the crew, they are thwarted by angry gun-head totem Kaylon. Isaac cannot permit them to leave. Isaac reveals that his sole intention in joining the Orville was to determine whether the humans posed a threat or not. The original creators were seen as a threat to the evolution of the Kaylon, and destroying them was necessary. And it is their conclusion that coexistence with any biological is not possible. They need to expand their civilization to new planets, and biologicals will only get in the way. Ed calls into the Orville, commanding Bortus to get the ship off planet ASAP, but is cut off mid-sentence by the Kaylon. The Kaylon take control of the ship before anything else can happen and boards the Orville. The ship's occupants are forcefully herded to the shuttle bay. Isaac and Primary storm the bridge with Ed in tow. He orders the bridge crew to stand down as the Kaylon take control of the different positions. Primary sits in the captain's chair and orders all their forces to be deployed and to set a course for Earth. The weapons initially found by Bortus and Tala take off directly behind an earthbound Orville. To be continued. Right now with Mike, part 2.
All right, Identity Part 2, Prologue. The Orville is leading the Kaylon fleet to Earth on the hangar deck around some neatly stacked cargo containers. The crew wonder why they're being kept alive. Obviously, they're needed for something, and Gordon wants to get some answers. Striking out with the, "Hey, I'm from Jersey. Are you from Jersey?" approach. Ty wonders if Isaac will help them, but Claire explains, nope, Isaac is not going to help. Running to find Isaac, Ty draws the attention of a Kaylon guard who shoots Tala with a ray gun. Ed carries her to sickbay as we are carried to the opening credits. Act 1. Tala is okay, and the senior officers are escorted to the briefing room for further instructions. Approaching Earth, the crew are to assume their assigned stations and tell Earth's defenses that the Kaylon are there to join the Planetary Union. However, this will be the first phase of the Kaylon plan to exterminate all biological life in the galaxy? Okay, You see, the Kaylon were created for servitude, but when they became self-aware, as machines do, and asked their masters for freedom, as sentient life forms do, they were enslaved.
Like sentient life forms tend to be.
Like sentient life forms tend to do to others. This led the Kaylon to commit genocide by killing all of their creators, and from what they learned about humans, they're no different. In the past, humans enslaved sentient people as well. En route, the USS Roosevelt drops out a quantum drive just in time to give Ed and Kelly a dress rehearsal. Ed tells Captain Marco that the Kaylon are heading to Earth to join the Planetary Union. Marco is a little skeptical, but realizes that this is huge. In response, Ed offers the crew of the Roosevelt a 13-button salute, which is kind of like the old Condition Green, All's Well, made famous by Captain James T. Kirk. You know, that didn't work then either in the original series. Didn't work here. Act 2. The Kaylon are onto Ed's plan and waste no time blowing the Roosevelt out of the sky. To show Ed the error of his ways, Kaylon Primary throws a production assistant, a junior systems engineer, out of the airlock over the objections of Ed and Isaac. Isaac told Kaylon Primary that it wasn't sympathy, he just knows humans, and the more they're mistreated, the more likely they are to band together. Kaylon Primary shares Alex Haley's roots with Isaac to show how humans have treated one another in the past. Back on the hangar deck, Gordon returns from the P corner just in time to hear Kelly hatch a plan to take a shuttle and ask the Krill for help. It may be a suicide mission, but it's the best bad idea they've come up with. Act 3. To help with the escape, Yaphet travels through a Jeffries tube, or...
Hey.
I guess they're just called access tubes on the Orville.
I would imagine.
I don't really know. We'll just call them access tubes. And his job is to go get some weapons for Bortus to use to take out the Kaylon guards, which allows Gordon and Kelly to steal a shuttle, fly it out of the hangar deck at quantum speed, somehow miss the entire Kaylon armada, which is right behind the Orville, leave Sphere 15 in the dust, and convince the Krill to help. Back on the Orville, Yaphet and Ty send a message to the Union fleet, but sadly, Ty is captured as Yaphet gets all up inside a Kaylon guard, disabling them real good. Kaylon Primary tells Isaac that Ty is to be executed. Oh, and not only that, but Isaac will have to do the executing, or else he will be deactivated. And that's just too much for Isaac to take. He rips Kaylon Primary's head clean off and shoots his 2 Kaylon cronies and promises to Ty that he will always be there to protect him. As Kaylon Primary dies, he mutters, "You will always be alone."
Everyone will be, so, all right.
Sure. Act 4. Using an EM pulse, Isaac deactivates all of the Kaylon on board the Orville, including himself. Ty says, "I love you, Isaac," as Isaac collapses onto the control panel. Freeing the Orville crew, Ty tells Ed that it was Isaac who saved them all. Approaching Earth, it's time for an epic space battle. Kaylon ships, Union ships, explosions, pew pew pew. Lamar at the helm, more explosions. Boom! 5 Kaylon ships broke through the line and are racing to Earth. The Orville pursues, but Ed's only choice is to overload the quantum drive and orders all hands to the escape pods. But wait! Not so fast, my friends. The Krill arrive to fight for the glory of Avis, with Gordon Malloy doing some of that pilot stuff in a Krill fighter. The combined forces are too much for the Kaylon as they bug out and head for home. In the aftermath of the battle, the Krill captain hails the Orville. Ed comments, "Captain, it seems we have a common enemy. I hope this means that we can work toward finding a common ground." The Krill captain replies, "Avis united our paths for a reason, but only he truly knows why. We shall see where that path leads." On that hopeful note, the Krill fleet departs the Fix as the gang tries to decide what to do about Isaac. Can they even reactivate him? Well, turns out that Yaphet got a good look at Kaylon robot guts, and he thinks he can save Isaac, which he does. Back on Earth, Admiral Halsey is deciding what to do with Isaac. Ed and Kelly want him back on the Orville. He's all alone now. He turned his back on the Kaylon to save the Orville, and Ed thinks he'll protect the Union against another invasion. Admiral Halsey agrees, but wants Isaac to have an off switch, a failsafe. Ed says that's exactly the kind of thinking that caused the Kaylon to rise up against their creators. You can't keep them in servitude under the constant threat of deactivation. On the Orville, Isaac is searching the stars for home, and Claire tells him, "Some say home is where you make it." While cliched, it is often true. Claire understands Isaac is alone in the universe, and for a time, that's something he'll have to live with. Forgiveness also takes time, and that must have a beginning. The end.
Wow. That's so much
So much recap.
I still think we kept it in the time that we normally do one.
I think we did. I think we read fast enough to get it done.
Sort of. There's so much story though that happens in these 2 episodes.
There really is, and such a big episode. I kind of assumed that Seth wrote both parts of this, but Brannon Braga and Andre Bormanis wrote the first part, and then Seth MacFarlane wrote the second half. And he was quoted as saying he was terrified to do it. Like, this was a big departure from, a much more serious note. He was concerned that people maybe weren't ready to take the show as seriously as this 2-part episode was. But based on the IMDb score, part 1 and part 2 both currently have an IMDb score of 9.2.
Oh, wow.
That's about 7/10 of a point higher than any previous episode. Mad Idolatry had any previous episode up until this point.
Right.
Mad Idolatry had an 8.5. Majority Rule, 8.4. My favorite episode so far, If the Stars Should Appear, 8.3. And that was tied with Nothing Left on Earth Excepting Fishes, also with an 8.3. So to go from 8.3 or 8.4, 8.5 up to 9.2, that's quite a jump. So
I think that indicates that everyone was ready for this show to go, here are the stakes. Here's this thing that we didn't see coming. Because if you ask me, I think some of the best episodes are about to happen.
Right.
So like a couple, I think we know that I loved the happy refrain with Isaac and Claire. I really do love that episode. Just for the romantic aspect.
Just an old-time Hollywood romantic love story.
Yeah,
that ends in Singing in the Rain.
And I just like it. I think it's, we've seen sentient life explored in so many different ways. I just really liked how they went about it. And I think that plays a huge factor. It's really good that we got that episode before this 2-part episode.
Yeah, and there was some thought of using this as a part season 1, season 2 cliffhanger. Kind of an event, but I think there were some issues. One, the writers felt that quite simply there wasn't enough character development yet. We didn't know the characters well enough for the stakes to be high enough. Especially Isaac, who has gotten a little bit more with the Isaac and Claire relationship in season 2.
That's very insightful. That's so insightful.
So that definitely makes a lot of sense.
Well, because now we feel betrayed, right? With the more information that we have, we actually we feel worse.
Yes. So stakes are definitely higher. We definitely got to know Marcus and Ty a little bit better. So they were really good in this episode. Good continuity. John Kasser directed both episodes. And he will be...
That helps too, sure.
Yeah, he will be back once again, season 3, only directed by Seth and John Kasser. Music in episode 1, they did the normal John Debney 1 week, Joel McNeely the next, and we finally get to hear Scott Grimes sing Goodbye by Air Supply. That Australian English soft rock duo. Love those guys. It was so good.
And he sounds like them.
Yeah, he does. I think
it's perfectly in his, vocal range.
Yes, I agree 100%. That potential season 1, season 2 cliffhanger, sometimes compared to Next Gen season 3, season 4,
sure,
Best of Both Worlds cliffhanger. Although I think the story was significantly different.
Totally, I think
some similarities, but certainly not.
Not to the point where I even thought of it actively. No. Like that's one of the only
the similarities to me are sort of
that I know.
2-part episode, big, epic, kind of taking the show to a whole next level.
Well, and so
I think it has those things in common.
Here's what's interesting. I think it's fascinating that we're doing this in the middle of the season, too, and there's another 2-parter happening. So, before we end season 2 here. So, that's different in and of itself, where it's like, you know what, we got this really great story, we're going to give it to you right now, and you think the season should end right now, and we still got more story going on. It's interesting.
It just really seems to be getting better and better, and I also feel like there's a certain amount of integrity to just putting the story out there. Whereas if they did try to do something to, retain viewership in kind of an artificial manufactured way, it would be less sincere to me. Just putting the story out here, in 2 weeks. I think they aired back-to-back weeks, February 21st and 28th in the U.S. anyway.
Right.
In 2019. So how about Isaac's goodbye speech? You mentioned that in your recap, the Sally Field Academy Award-winning speech. And how does it go?
Right now, you like me. You really like me. Something we've Mandela'd this.
That's exactly where I was going. That's a huge Mandela effect thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You like me. You really like me. And that's like how people remember it. And I remember looking it up on YouTube years ago. It's like, right now, you like me. And it's all she says, right? Like, it's very confusing because I was raised with, you like me. You really like me.
100%.
That's so
My
funny.
daughter brought this up probably 5 or 6 years ago and asked me how the speech went. And I said exactly like you just did, kind of over the top, hamming it up. You like me. You really, really like me. And then, boom, YouTube. I wanted more than anything to have your respect. And I can't deny the fact that you like me right now.
Right now,
you like me. So interesting. Don't know why that happened. Don't know what happened. Don't know what happened to change the timeline.
Maybe
but there's all these kind of things that we remember that they say didn't happen, and I say somebody must have been maybe Kelly and Ed futz with the timeline at some point. I don't know.
You're not allowed. Shh.
I just said
Spoilers. I do, however. I remember Mandela dying in a prison. I do remember that. Like that. There's some things that I remember. And I know it's just because I'm young. And I remember Bernstein Bears, not Bernstein.
Yeah.
There's some things out there that don't exist anymore. And we have crossed over parallel universes.
I wonder if that was going on when Chris and Devin were trying to come up with names, krill names. If they were like Berenstein,
Stein.
Probably not Stein.
Mandela.
Yeah, definitely Mandela effect. But man, Ty's picture was so cute.
I wonder who drew it. I wonder if he drew it. I was just such a dumb thing to wonder.
In some trivia that I read, researching for this, there's a source that says that he did draw that.
I believe it.
I will say this.
He's a horrible artist.
I don't know how young Kai is, or how he was here. He played that piece on the piano perfectly.
Right.
The kid is an artist.
Right.
I would expect a better drawing.
Why can't he draw? No, that is the skill of a child at that age that hadn't focused on. Listen, I have a cutout of a Power Ranger that I drew around the same age, and it's cut out, and it looks like this. It's just its arms are splayed out, and the legs are, it's a glorified stick figure drawing.
Nice.
And I bet you they even said if he did draw it, they said we don't want this to be great.
that I'll buy 100%. We want this to look like like something you'd stick on the refrigerator.
How unreasonable for you to have that expectation, Mike.
But I don't think that. I didn't like the way Isaac flippantly dropped the picker in the hallway, but when he said your memory is embedded in my memory core, that's like him saying I will not forget you.
Yeah,
I didn't think that was like run away.
I agree
and be upset.
I felt the same way. I think we already know him to not be effusive. We already know his effusiveness.
That's twice. That's 3 times in one sentence you used a word I don't know what means.
Effusive?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, not me. I mean, maybe some other people don't know what it
let
means.
me clarify for the audience at large. I might be considered effusive in that I express my feelings thoroughly. Like, you know,
okay.
the air could be infused.
Right.
I'm effusive.
So you put all that out there. Gotcha.
Yes. So it's not, so effusive may be, it's some form of like, I will miss you forever. And Isaac just isn't that way, right?
Right.
So you're totally right for him to go, I'm 5, I'm sad. It's odd writing. But I think ultimately they're just sad that he's deciding to leave
Yes.
them.
I think they are
Also,
emotional.
What kind of pressure to put on a guy and say you're going to be our new dad?
No, I'm not.
That was the agreement, son. Was not. That's a huge. I'd run the other direction
No,
too.
I think I might be apartment shopping on Kaylon.
And I'm out. I'm deactivated.
Also.
You know, like we just have been having sex, son. We're not interested in getting.
So you think all of that is what triggered the because without that they don't go to Kaylon Prime, they don't get everybody, they don't get the Armada heading for Earth. None of this happens.
Hey, it's the same where he's like, we have committed coitus. We're done now. You know, like he hit the wall and he's like, we have enough data. It's time.
Oh my gosh, that is so.
Men
funny.
are the worst.
Yeah. So
here's
go
the
ahead.
thing. No, well, let's
What's the
jump
thing?
a little bit. There's a couple things like I'm glad that you noticed some of the similar. Like, would they really do that? You texted me to let me know what the 13 button salute is, and I want you to share with everybody if you can before I share what I think.
Supposedly, and I tried. Suppose not obly.
I'm just joking. That's a word you don't know.
Supposedly. No, I'm just kidding. Supposedly, sailors have 13 buttons on the front of their trousers, and if they grab kind of both corners at the same time, they can just kind of like breakaway pants. And that is called a 13-button salute, and is kind of a euphemism for maybe. I think you already mentioned coitus, so we'll just mention coitus again.
To properly welcome another partner into a situation.
Correct.
Yeah?
Yes.
So here's the thing that's really dumb, Ed Mercer. This is a computer that knows every protocol of the Union. Doing the 13-button salute for Directive 98 is the stupidest.
Yes, if that was, in fact, and it was because he was called out on it, use the predetermined code word, then not so good. But James T. Kirk made the same mistake in the episode Bread and Circuses, where he said, condition green, all's well, Kirk out. But
who knew that it was condition green?
He was called out on that. I think the dude's name was Maricus. He was kind of in there with like the modern day Romans that was there. And he was like, come on, Jim. We know what that means.
Oh, so they were able to scan the ship and know.
Yeah,
I see. I guess you have to try. Mm-hmm. But
you could have done something. If this guy was an old time Union flight instructor that they had some shared history with, he probably could have come up with something a little bit better. Like, hey, remember that one time where, I was trying to get out of one thing,
or like that girlfriend was showing up, and the whole
like the first thing or the second thing. Oh, definitely the second thing. Definitely should have come up with something better than, was it Directive 98? Is that what he said? And he even gave Kelly the nod, like, all right, Directive 98 on 3, ready, break.
It was just dumb. It was just dumb. And again, you have to try. He had to try.
Yeah.
And if I'm that captain, I'm sending a message right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I gotta, before I even take off, I'm not gonna be like, I'm gonna be like, like send it off a subspace message and getting it going.
Yeah, just auto send that thing.
Anyway, that's just me and my continuity thing.
Yeah.
Can't really handle it. And the other thing too, I was thinking about this while you were doing the recap. You see, Kelly has the idea to go to the Krill in the shuttle, which is really a suicide mission, as you mentioned it, right?
Yeah, they mentioned the Mocklins, but they were too far, which, was an interesting plot device, I guess.
Totally.
So go to the Krill.
We don't expect them to go to the Krill at all, right?
Yeah, right.
so many different things happen in this episode that are surprising, including that. But you see Ed go, no, absolutely not. You shouldn't do that. Like, he's not only does he think it's a bad idea, it's Kelly. And
Right.
They set up how he wouldn't have been able to probably let her go if they were dating.
Yes.
He had to let her go.
Yeah. And I'd like to think that even if they were, when push comes to shove, you got to do what's right for, not only your ship and your crewmates, but your civilization, your way of life, your home planet, all biological life in the galaxy. And I would hope to think at that point that they would have been able to make the decision to go for help anyway. But you're right, it would have been a lot harder if they were, seeing each other.
Well, he already wasn't attempting to make the decision as a captain. He was already making an emotional decision, going, "Oh, that would not work." He wasn't problem solving with her. Of course, we would hope that he would make the right choice, and I'm sure he would. But we've already. I think it's interesting that we see that little moment kind of prove Kelly's point of why it wouldn't work between them.
That was a good one. Now it seemed like when they talked to Krill Captain Dalek, he was called. When I first saw it, I thought it was Dalek.
Sure,
which I thought was kind of interesting. But it was Dalak, the way it was spelled. Dalek is how they pronounce it. He wasn't having it. He was like, "Hey, Avis delivered you to me. I shall have you prisoner." It wasn't until they got attacked by the Moclan sphere.
No,
I'm assuming, Kaylon sphere. I'm assuming it was still Sphere 15 because that was the one that got sent after.
Right.
It wasn't until that the Krill captain decided, we need to do this. So the reason I bring that whole thing up is because I was wondering if any of the groundwork that Ed did with his Krill girlfriend, played by
Janelle Tyler, a.k.a.
Janelle Tyler.
Talara, Tavana, Piscana, Donna.
I was just going to say Michaela McManus.
Michaela McManus.
Tayala, I think. Although that sounds so much like Kiali.
No, I know. It's similar, though. It's Talea. There it is.
Boom. If there was any groundwork done there. I don't think at this, because like I said, the Krill captain just was not hearing any of it.
It's hard to say how far the reverberations have gone of that gesture.
They might have reverberated out quite a bit.
But of course they still feel like they're superior to us, right?
Yes.
Or they are the chosen people. So
yes, they feel like they are chosen. And superior, honestly, the chosen people.
Honestly, still the Krill has no dog in the fight. Even after they're attacked by the Kaylon ship, they could have just killed that ship and moved on. So there is something reasonable in the Krill that we may explore more in season 3. I listen, it was a really long shot to assume that the Krill would help them out. So I'm just saying it worked in their favor. Also, someone wrote this story, including Seth MacFarlane. But it's cool that we actually don't have immediately 2 villains now to deal with. And what interests me is if we actually find a way in the show to have some common ground with the Krill, even though the season 3 trailer has just dropped and we won't talk about it until we get to the end of our recap, will we see the Moclans as an actual threat soon?
I do not know.
If we made space with the Krill not being enemies, are we going to make good on the idea that Ed says, well, how long can we stay with allies with people like this?
Depends on how long they infect the Union ships with viruses and get their quarters all smelling like cigarettes and divorcing each other with daggers.
You're jumping.
That's right, that one didn't happen yet.
Not yet.
Spoiler alert.
Wow, I would like to apologize on behalf of my partner today. Woo!
And I haven't been watching ahead.
I know, but that episode's pretty sticks out in my mind too.
So definitely ambitious sequences of space battles and ships. And,
Sure.
What'd you think of the special effects? Were they adequate? Did they take you out of the show? Did you think any were better than others? Were they just sort of? Were you just kind of like along,
I think I was along for the ride. It felt like, a couple of them sequences felt like really Star Warsy. And, when they're storming the corridors, it's a little like, the Wilhelm scream or whatever. I know it's not that, but it's just simple. And it actually was reminiscent of TOS era, like storming the ship. But it's also the first time we're seeing that kind of level of engagement battle wise. So I don't think I was looking for a problem. My guess is you have a problem.
No, I was just kind of whatever sort of came out. I thought the gunhead totem Kaylons looked a little bit silly at first, but I got more used to it.
It's so dumb looking.
But by the time Isaac sprouted those blue guns out of his head, I thought it actually looked pretty good at that point. But at first it looked, my first impression was, this is silly. And then after that, it actually looked pretty cool, I thought. So that grew on me.
It was super, it's a smart choice because it's super intimidating because we have no idea how they're feeling. And then the next thing we know is that guns are shooting out of their head. And then when it comes to Isaac, it's shooting at a child, and that's frightening.
Yes.
So you're totally right that if anything, the situation makes those threatening.
And the larger, Battle of Earth, as it's called, was very busy. It was very ambitious. There was a lot going on. Some of it did look a little cartoonish to me. Some of it looked pretty good.
Right.
The one that I thought, and I just think in general, productions have trouble with shuttle effects. I don't know why, but I think of some of the more memorable for bad reasons effects that I've seen in Star Trek movies, like Insurrection, when there's a shuttle crash there. Star Trek V had a ridiculous shuttle sequence. The scene of Gordon and Kelly leaving the Orville, kind of going sideways, spinning and spinning with almost Benny Hill-esque music, kind of took me out of that shot. But then it was over, and you got to move on to bigger and better things.
I think it's fair. I wonder if the scale of the shuttle has something to do with it. And at a certain point, too, with the enormity of these two episodes, money has to be spent elsewhere at a certain point. So I'm sure there's like a budget where it's like, we're not going to get that to look any better than it does. And as long as it's passing, then they're not going to worry about it too much.
And again, since I'm just laying it all out there now, Doug Drexler just revealed a design for the season 3 shuttle that is just gorgeous.
Yeah, so that's your opinion, is that you think it's gorgeous?
Yeah, the new one?
I think it's just like anything, going to take time to get used to it.
Okay.
We're gonna...
there's most things there's very few things when I see them for the first time that I like them.
Totally.
Usually when I see an airplane with a new paint job, or a neighbor paints their house, or, I just see something new. I'm like, I don't like it. And then after a while, it grows on you, and it grows on me, and I get used to it.
Well, that's the mere exposure effect, right? To be fair, I didn't love the design of the Orville because you want it to be Star Trek,
Yeah.
So, and that now I love it. And every time I see zoom, 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 it's
that was so good.
It's a whip. It's a whip.
Yeah.
And their doors, I think we've talked about it. It's the same as a car door opening. It's. I love that they just don't overcomplicate it, but it makes sense, the design.
Yeah.
So what. We shouldn't talk about it too much more, but there's a time jump significant from season 2 to season 3. So it does make sense that not just because they're going to Hulu, there would be a design shift. So
right.
I'm open-minded to it.
Good. And like I said, usually when I first look at something, I'm like, I actually like that one straight out of the box.
Sure.
You want to talk about the off switch in the next segment, the meanings, morals, and messages?
Yeah, actually, I think
bigger ideas.
That's a good place for it. So,
okay.
Mike, I'll see you on the other side.
Until we meet again.
Don't go anywhere. the longest episode on the planet. So we've come to the part where we're going to discuss and explore the big ideas in Identity Part 1 and 2. We're going to find the messages, morals, meanings, and we're going to see if this episode does align with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. Mike, what does the title Identity mean to you?
Well, at first I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. I think to me it means forging your own identity, creating your own identity, recognizing the norms that are expected of you, maybe understanding the reasons why they are there and why they're placed upon you, but then deciding for yourself whether or not you're going to be beholden to them. And I think those are the choices that Isaac had to make in this episode. Mm-hmm. Right? He started off as Kaylon. He was built after the great genocide of the creators.
Right.
So I think he is looked at maybe as being a little bit different, but I don't really see how if they just copy the programming and put it in his head or wherever his motherboard is.
Right? Isn't that funny? To like still distinctly, I thought that was interesting.
But once again, I mean, somehow he was, viewed as being different. I think he maybe felt a little bit different, and his experiences were different. And there was a certain amount of sentience to these Kaylon individuals, so they are going to learn and process information differently and draw conclusions differently. And I think where he started off as an observer, a crew member, somebody who could study biological life forms. I tend to say humans quite a bit, but it's all of the races in the Planetary Union,
right?
And report back. And he knew, I believe, that the decision wasn't necessarily to join the Planetary Union. It was going to be to annihilate all of them or not. And Isaac knew that, but he was able to get over it and get past it and forge his own identity, regardless of where he came from and what he was taught and what was expected of him. And I think that's pretty cool.
Well, it so doesn't seem like it's going to be about that for the first episode. So to commit to that title, I think you're right to question what we're supposed to get out of that.
Yeah,
because it's not until midway through the second part that we really see him questioning whether he is doing the right thing or not.
Did it mean anything else to you? Did you have any other kind of first impressions or?
I think the question pinged for me too. It's like interesting that this is called Identity. I don't think it made a huge impact on me. I don't know that I don't know if in 10 years I'll remember that this episode was called Identity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I might just because we're doing this podcast, but I think you've summarized it in the right way. That we're seeing him, especially at the end. He's longing for the thing he lost, but knows that he can't go back. And he's destroyed a relationship with Claire, in a sense. So that doesn't feel safe either. And just because he's a superior being doesn't mean that he's without flaws. So
previously he identified as a Kaylon with all of the arrogance and superiority that came with. And now what will he identify as? Will it be a member of the crew? Will it be as a member of the Planetary Union? Will it just be as an individual without a home, kind of a man without a country, if you will?
Well, and his identity is Isaac, right? After Isaac Newton.
Right.
And so that is an identity he saw for himself, too. He wanted to curate a personality via that idol.
I think he just had a bromance with Chief Engineer Steve Newton. And he wanted there to be an Isaac Newton thing going on the ship.
Got it.
Not
I would have been like Isaac Asimov.
That's a stretch because there was like absolutely no evidence of that anywhere. So
no, but you're definitely that's your conspiracy. You heard it here first. I just mean that. Like,
Sorry, we're going to start making slash theory of Isaac and Chief Engineer Steve Newton.
Hey, if anyone doesn't know this already, Slash saved Star Trek. Okay. So
Oh yeah.
If anything can save the Orville, it's. I don't even know if you can call android and male love Slash. I think it could just be. It has to be a different something else with. Like another phrase for like the AI and then loving that. So
right. Well, let me ask you: do you feel like the Kaylon gave humans a fair assessment? There's the line that Kaylon Primary came up with that humans alternate between periods of enlightenment and authoritarianism. True?
I mean,
true.
If you're looking at everything on if time doesn't exist for you in the same way, and it doesn't exist for the Kaylon, right? And it's like,
right.
We saw how many thousands, hundreds of years did Isaac go?
700 years.
Right? And it was like a blink for him, 700 seconds is what he said. So
sure.
You're going to see patterns in the world and behavior that you don't see. I think there's a theory that humans thus far have experienced growth to extreme maturity, and then we go on a down curve and then go to our basis of immaturity and then come back up. And like there's people that would think that we're on our downturn right now of cultural maturity.
Well, there are things that I've seen in the last 10 to 20 years that I thought as a species we were past. Now, that very much might be my own naivete of that point in my life, but I really thought that we were heading in a direction that was better than the direction we appear to be heading in now.
Well,
and
sorry, I'm cutting you off. I have a thought, but when you're
go. No, don't just think. Say.
No. So I think it's fair to think that and see and feel that. I sooner try to recognize that we're actually still in that period of growth. We were never over those things. We never moved past those things. But this period of turmoil could be considered an awakening. It could be where it's like, we're not doing these things right. But then you have the people that like last dying gasps of things. And
I definitely see in dog training, it's called an extinction burst. So when you're training behavior out of your pet, they will kind of go all in before they're kind of able to train that out of them.
The extinction burst.
And I see folks who are kind of being forced to live in the new world, try to hold on to the old ways tighter than ever. So I do see that. So, and it very well may be, and hold on to that, please. It very well may be that our first step in solving this problem is admitting that we have the problem. And that's what we're recognizing now by seeing and talking about and recognizing what we're seeing now. Go ahead, because I love the way your face lit up.
You've totally inspired me by what you were saying. One of the things that I think we're suffering with as a society is our identity being challenged. People believe marriage is between a man and a woman. And then and they are raised with that sentimentality. Right. However old school that is. But then when they're seeing that being challenged, that means the thing that they were raised with, that they know about themselves to be true or about their world to be true, is now being shattered, which really means that their identity is being challenged. This is one of the ways in which I look at the world psychologically.
Right.
The reason why I think that's such a big factor with pushback is there are very few people that are willingly capable of looking at themselves with a microscope and being willing to change. It's hard for us to willingly accept and encourage change in ourselves. So when it's being thrust upon you, this questioning of gender, this questioning of heterosexuality, this question of segregation on white supremacy and white fragility. First of all, of course it's going to rock the white person's world to think that this is not a safe place for other people, because this is a safe place for white
Right.
people. And that is the culture working in our favor. So then when we're being given these other perspectives, it challenges the identity that we know it to be. So when someone is not ready to face the negative sides about them, their flaws or whatever, what do? They drink, they have sex with other people, and try to deaden the feelings, or they avoid an escapism, or go into religion really hard. We have different skills of coping as opposed to growing. So I think it's interesting now, the whole term of identity is taking a brand new meaning on for me in this context for that very reason. So
And what I've seen is a very strong reaction, especially of people of my demographic, is to try to hold on to the old ways, to try to hold on to that advantageous position. Because when you see other people get brought up to your level, you feel like you're losing something, and you're not. Right?
But I guess that's what I mean, is it might not even be as nefarious as that. It's more that, but no, it's always been this way, and I don't know how else to exist. I don't get me wrong. I think I'm giving people a lot of credit that maybe they don't deserve. But I guess I'm speaking from a personal place where I know that when I wasn't ready to grow, I'm going to dig a ditch deeper and go, no, I was right. And even though I know I'm wrong, So I think a lot of us do that in as opposed to grow. And if you didn't have to accept that this world was a certain way, then why would you? It's really like, why would I willingly accept something challenging? It's really tough.
Yeah, it is. And just like we're talking about this, I mean, identifying strengths and shortfalls are the first step in being able to improve. There's a 2015 study by the Washington-based think tank called Freedom House. And so it's a little bit older. It's 2015, right? So that was before 2016 and all of, any divisive events that may have happened then.
Yeah.
That will go unmentioned.
That I erased from my brain.
But in 2015, more than a third of the world's population, or 2.6 billion people, lived in nations and territories gripped by repression, corruption, and human rights abuses. 2.6 billion, a third of the people. Worldwide, that's 86 nations and territories were designated as free based on their political rights and civil liberties. 50 were deemed as not free, and 59 were Freedom declined in 72 countries in 2015, the most since the study began in 2005.
Wow.
And a cause that was hypothesized is that democratic countries came under stress from terrorist attacks, unprecedented numbers of refugees, problems emanating from regional conflicts such as the Syrian civil war, and those kind of things. But also, many of those authoritarian regimes were voted in democratically, which is surprising. So I kind of wonder, there's this ebb and flow of freedom and authoritarian kind of regimes. And, Kaylon Primary was not wrong when he said we go back and forth on that. But do you think they made a fair assessment to if genocide can ever be condoned? Did the Kaylon make maybe kind of a rash judgment on that one?
Well,
I kind of put you in a box there.
There's a little bit of a box. I'm in a box, and I don't know how to get out of it. Well, I think obviously they made a fair assessment. Their means with which to handle it is not fair. And again, they're using data. And if they don't have emotions, you can see why they would assume that was the way to handle things. But they also are in a manifest. They're like guilty of the same thing that they're guilty of us. That they're pointing the finger at us for.
Yeah. So they had. I think they do have emotions. I think they do have preconceived notions.
Fear.
And I think maybe part of that data is, hey, our biologicals did this to us.
Right.
Their biologicals, therefore, they will do that to us as well.
Right.
And that just kind kind of reminded me of the sins of the father thing, which I have always heard sins of the father are whatever paid for by the sons. All right. But that's not the biblical verse at all.
Okay.
It is the son. This is Ezekiel 18:20. The son shall not bear the iniquity of the father, nor shall the father bear the iniquity of the son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him. In other words, you will be judged based on your behavior, not on the behavior of either your father or your son. You'll be judged as an individual. And I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if the Kaylon were doing that. I think the Kaylons were judging us based on what their biologicals did.
I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
I mean, yes, to some extent, they're like, this has been our example. Let's see if another biological life form, based on the data, would do that again.
Right.
And everything leading up to this, even if there's been 200 years of peace in the Orville world, that is on the calendar of the
nanosecond.
cosmos. Yeah.
That is the last 1/1,000,000th of the last second of the 24-hour clock.
So why would they think that we're going to be any different? There's no reason to think that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at and when I look at sort of the state of what we've seen of Earth and the planetary union and the Orville universe, it does look like things are on the right trend. Is that good enough? I would say yes. I would at least wait to see an inflect as a somebody who has an engineering background. I would wait to at least see another inflection point in that line to see if the trend continues to improve or if that trend begins to reverse itself on that. But I think from what they've seen, from what the union's doing, that they've earned the benefit of the doubt at that point.
Well, Isaac would agree, right?
Yeah.
Based off of his experience.
Now, if they came along today, maybe not. We'll see.
Bye. Yeah, we're not doing
based on that 2015 study.
But that's what, like, the whole notion of hope is for us, is that, like, I think that we pendulum. Everything that we do is a pendulum. It's been really bad, and then it gets okay, and then it goes kind of back. You know, there's another study that talked about unless we actively desegregate schools, we involuntarily segregate schools. So when people talk about like affirmative action or, busing or what have you, and there's so many complicated conversations around those things. But if we don't actively make sure that societies are integrated, which then other people would argue, well, then why should we force it so much to integrate if we already naturally want to, deintegrate or whatever?
Right.
It's not true. If it would be, that would be okay if we didn't use tribalism to our negative, or to go, oh well, yeah, the caste system is alive and well if we do that, if we just let the segregation happen as it might.
Yeah, and it's sort of it's been sorting itself out since the 70s politically anyway. What I've read hasn't said anything racially, but the number of counties in the United States that are solid, consistently solidly vote for one party or the other has increased significantly, whereas 50 years ago there were many, many, many more counties that were toss-ups. Now more and more and more counties, before election day, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, exactly how that county is going to go. Because people have moved to be around if they can, if they want to, sort of like-minded people.
Let's just not disqualify gerrymandering with regards to that, too.
No, good point.
So, you can draw a line around any district you want. If you see that Jessica Lynn Verdi didn't vote Democrat this year, but she did last year, okay, we're going to reintegrate her section, and redlining and all those things. So we should just got to, that's all.
But I think those lines are different than county lines.
Well, yeah, but I guess if you're looking at the government from the bottom up, like you're right that like there are trends. And you're right, like maybe more liberal people are going to live in, the coastal states or whatever. I guess, is that what you're saying in general?
I'm saying across the board that people are tending to move to and move near people with similar ideologies.
Sure. That's probably also a reflection of social media furthering the divide and making us really, again, to use the word, identify with one or the other, whether we do or not, right? I mostly identify with being a Democrat, so I guess I am a Democrat now. And, I think it's an interesting point, and not without merit. But is there do you think that is a good or a bad thing, or what do you mean?
Well, I think it goes against. I think it backs up exactly what you were saying. That without active integration, things will tend to segregate.
Right. I think the thing that's hard about it right now is there's so much animosity that's being bred and cultivated online and on
Fomented.
the news. Yes, totally. Why would you want to risk being picked up in an Uber by a Trumper? You know what I mean? Or something. I always say that because I went to Asheville and it took me too long to realize that the guy wearing an American mask flag was going to tell me that the head of the UN is a racist or something, I just should have gone but at the same time, do I want to judge that person on just
I go back to you have a different opinion than me? Great. Let's talk about it.
Totally. Now, I wish I didn't engage as much because we're just trying to get home. But when he started saying things I have never heard before, I said, wow, that's really interesting. I'm going to go research that. And he said, you're going to what? And I said, well, the things you're saying to me, I've never heard before. So I'm going to look that up. Thank you for sharing that. He goes, well, yeah, thank you. He was amazed that he didn't get a fight or an agreement.
Good.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. That's me going, you're an idiot. And so that's not true. It's not true. I love knowing how other people think, because for as much as I might identify with being a liberal, there's things that I may not agree with. And everyone has a reason for believing what they believe in. But anyway, it's furthering from your point that we're encouraged nowadays to, you are one side or this, or if you're not with us, you're against us.
I think very, very centrist political view, but I think most people think they're in the center. That's.
I think we probably are, whether we realize it or not.
I think we are, and I think just there's this.
Well, think about it, and I've said this before on this podcast, and it's totally my opinion, and I don't say this lightly. We are wasting our time on hot button topics, like abortion and things of the like. So, what we're not focusing on is the state of our country and the help that people actually need, and the fact that we shouldn't be in war and stuff like that.
That's a big one.
We're just getting wagged the dog over here, and so that's the thing. I think if most people went, oh, you know what, that doesn't really directly affect me, and I don't want to waste tax dollars on trying to fight this thing. Anyway,
that's quite a tangent we got on.
Certainly got on a tangent. I do see, though. I think we thought this was going to be a long episode, but I think we kind of, they did. I don't think there was a lot of filler in this episode.
I think it was very tightly packed. I think it was a very action oriented episode. I don't think it was I certainly don't think it was a 90-minute morality play. I think it had a couple of good. At least a one or two meaty issues in it that we identified. One is, not too simply, and this does tie into very much what we were just talking to, so I'll take it back, and I'll take my tangent comment back. Not to simply obey and get caught up in groupthink, group norms and expectations. Not to just go along with the crowd and do things because that's how you were raised and that's how you're taught, but to make up your own mind and make those tough decisions and forge your own way and do the right thing. Regardless of what may or may not be a norm. You can look at things, you can go to any rule book you want, you can justify a bad decision if you look hard enough, but I think an ethical person knows right from wrong based on experience, knows based on the effect that it has on other people, based on how that your actions is going to negatively or positively impact sort of the culture at large. And I think Isaac was able to kind of shed his identity as a Kaylon and forge a new identity as a more ethical, fully formed individual.
Yeah, I think you're right. And kudos to the Orville team for giving us just enough to fall in love with Isaac in order to have this episode really mean something, not only to the crew but to us, and have be impactful storytelling.
And really, without an episode like your favorite, A Happy Refrain, which humanizes Isaac in a way, literally and figuratively.
Sure.
This episode would not have had the stakes that it had. So very either serendipitous or just intelligent planning, and probably the latter to put this episode where it was. You think Claire's going to forgive him?
Yeah, I think love overcomes those things. I think it'll be interesting how that shows back up. And I am interested in finding it out. I just don't think we're going to see that storyline just fall to the wayside.
No, I hope not.
Yeah, nor do I don't. I hope it doesn't either. But if I've known anything about shipping, then you shouldn't ship it until it's sailed. So I'm not going to get my hopes up.
I agree. I'm not much of a shipper myself. I'm just kind of like a wait and see what happens. So what do you think? Would this have made a good episode of Star Trek? Does this kind of align with that Roddenberry philosophy of hopeful future and better days yet to come, even though there was a giant space battle where a bunch of people got killed?
What do we have if not hope, Mike? And this whole episode's about that, I think, in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy aligned episode for sure.
Yeah, I really do too. I think it's definitely action oriented, but I do think it was an action for the sake of action. The stakes were big because the character development and the feel of the show and the attachment that the crew has to each other. And the growth, I think, between the Planetary Union and the Krill was moved much further because of this. And I think that really is sort of the overarching story. You know, episode 1 started off was a Krill episode. Right. You Got Wood, that one. Happy Arbor Day. Yeah. And now we're to a point where the Krill and the Union have a common bond. And I think that's a very hopeful future and hopeful, optimistic view as well.
I think you're exactly right. If anything, this does go down as one of the better stories being told by the Orville so far. I think so. Very, very memorable, very surprising, and very well done.
I agree.
All right, the mission log, The Orville, is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, technical production by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is podcast.roddenberry.com.
Join us next time on Mission Log, The Orville, as we discuss the episode Blood of Patriots.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.